Greetings, everyone. Nathan Nerdarchy here from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. And with me, I have two nerds.
Ted.
Nerdarchy Ryan.
Today, we're going to have a GM 911 discussion on, oh no, I'm pregnant!
Jump down to the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy. In this GM 911, Final Mustang wrote in saying that his players actually have sex in their game. And
not in real life, just in the game.
In the game.
They're player characters.
Let's
be really specific.
Are allowed to have sex with NPCs. This one player got pregnant.
Player character.
Got pregnant and wants to know what to do. So if you have a GM 911 and you want to send those to us as well as viewer suggestions, you can send those over to us at nerdarchy@gmail.com.
This table takes into a lot of the things into account. They can buy condoms, they can roll for STDs. So basically, there's a mini game in the role playing game of.
So however you want to handle your table, that's all well and good. The whole email or GM 911 thread is going to be down in the description. So there's a lot of things that he brings up as good points, and he wants to know what's our take on it.
Well, what our take is on having a pregnant adventurer and
Yes.
what the tolls on the body would be for a woman who happens to be pregnant, like issues of possible miscarriage and things like that, because you're fighting someone with sharp or blunt objects, and that could be a thing that happens.
The things that he brings up is, you've got the possibility of miscarriage, the possibility of exhaustion. Do they need to have custom armor made to account for the swelling pregnancy belly, all that kind of stuff? Ryan, you brought up a couple points of emotional reactions.
Well, like you could do like a mini like barbarian rage, like the damage bonus, like while pregnant. Like there's risks and trade-offs, but like that would be like a funny sort of hormonal rage sort of thing. Could be a thing that happens.
So now Nate and I have are both married with kids. Our wives have gone through this, so we've kind of experienced some of this gambit that is out there. So, what do you think, Nate?
I mean, you could do exhaustion levels at some point. Maybe they're always walking around at on certain days,
or maybe like
just certain days where you're gonna have problems, where you're just tired.
Maybe it's a Constitution saving throw.
Yeah, it could be a Constitution saving throw every day. Do you have a level of exhaustion today or not? And it wouldn't be something that you need to sleep off, but just something you're going to walk around groggy today.
So you suffer the effects of exhaustion without actually having the level.
Yeah, that's what you could do it that way. And it could just be a con save every day. Because eventually you're going to get a day where it's just junky because you failed your con save.
Six levels of exhaustion will just downright kill you.
Yeah.
So therefore
you have to gain them all the time.
You have to be very careful because you have to take days of rest in order to.
I mean, it's okay if you're just saying that this person, when they don't make the saving throw, they just have that first level of exhaustion. I mean, consecutive levels are going to be really bad, but then again, if someone was pregnant and pushing themselves to exhaustive states, it's also going to be really bad. So from a game mechanic standpoint, that kind of works.
Well, yeah, because if you actually gain a level of exhaustion, let's say you would be 2 down instead of 1 down.
Right.
Yeah. So then it's like, well, this character clearly needs bed rest because they are pregnant, and so that
So I would say one of the things I wanted to get into is we're not in an adventure society, so a lot of the people we see that are pregnant are not people that are super active all the time and doing kinds of crazy things like combat when they weren't pregnant, or running a mile or 10 miles or whatever. So if you go back in history to where we're more like hunter gatherers and maybe we had to run someplace or jog someplace to go pick up the next food item or kill the next prey, then you're going to be looking at more of those. I would do like the more sturdy version of what you think of when you think of in your mind like a pregnant woman. I would think of they're going to be able to deal with a lot more than people that have it tough just being pregnant and being a housewife or something, or being having a part-time job or something. That's going to be like really
they're not going to have the modern creature comforts.
I mean, the same thing, like I am not going to go chase down a deer by running 12 miles and throw a spear at it. I'm not going to do that right now. I mean, I could train for it, but I'm the average person is not going to be able to go do that.
Correct. Now we do say that within the 5th edition rule set, or in most RPGs, your player characters are heroes. They are a cut above the rest. They are beyond the norm. So therefore, in order to be so, you have something that other people just don't possess. Now, let's take that aspect and put that aside. Let's look at the actual typical mechanics of pregnancy. There's going to be
There's mechanics for pregnancy? I think it does rules.
Poor word choice. Let's look at
let's describe and discuss how babies are made to the audience.
Yes,
the miracle of nerd life.
So
just watch the Miracle.
The actual things that happen in a typical pregnancy. There's going to be some emotional outbursts and that kind of things. Again, in a typical, what you have in your own pregnancy or in your wives might be different, but in a typical, that does happen. Let that be a role playing thing that the player enjoys.
Well, you could take that as like a flaw. Like that
Yes.
would be an RP thing that you could do.
For the first 4 or 5 months, I wouldn't have any real physical change at all. You don't need to have anything with your armor. You're not going to have
I'd say 3 months is.
Well, you could do per trimester essentially.
Yeah, so let's cut it in the third.
All right, we got
trimester
third.
thing.
So your first trimester, you might be a little bit more emotional, but you've got no issues physically. You don't have to make any saves. You don't have to have any differences in your armor. Physically, no one's going to notice anything. You're just a little and
you probably eat more food.
Yes,
right.
But I wouldn't even call you need any more rations.
Yeah.
Like you just treat it as per.
They could just
as
RP
per
that
normal.
stuff.
Yeah.
Don't make them buy more stuff.
Yeah.
When you go into the second trimester, that's where you're going to begin to show. But I don't think that you would need to have a custom armor made. Perhaps you've just loosened it a little bit. Typically, when you capture armor off of a bad guy, most DMs that I've played with, you don't need to go pay to have that resized. Hey, look at that! It fits me. Wait,
Miraculous.
You're nowhere near the same size. He was 5 foot.
He was a
tall.
halfling, and you're 6'2". My word. Yeah.
Well, that's typically treated as small armor, but
Yeah.
anyway. So I wouldn't even go into that. You loosen your straps a little bit.
Yeah, you make some field adjustments, let's say.
Right. You could, if you really wanted to, step up. All right, now you need to go to 1.5 or 2 times rations. But if you're not really playing a game where you're keeping track of rations, then it's not a big
really.
deal.
If you're not gamist enough to, don't worry about that.
If you want to force emotional reactions, once a session, I think would be the call here, where you just be like, all right, this situation really has gotten to you. Go with it and allow the player to take it to whatever extreme they feel like doing. They're just going to overreact on something. I think
They left the seat up on the outhouse.
I think it would be comical.
Yeah.
And if the player's really getting into it, great. But don't do this if it's going to stress out the player and not become an enjoyable thing.
No, I think you could maybe you could start that exhaustion check, but make the DC fairly low, like say DC 13 or something like that. Like
I would just say make it a 10 to start, and then maybe add bonuses to it per trimester.
What I would say then, like second trimester, you do like a 13. Third, you do a DC 15, and just so it's
that works for me. Yeah.
10, 13, 15.
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing that we're doing
Yeah,
this.
that we're breaking down the rules for pregnancy.
Things I thought I would never do while I was
doing
Dungeons
Nerdarchy.
Jackson.
Well, typically in the games that we play in, we don't get into this stuff.
Yeah.
It's just not something that we've really done at our table. It's not something that we've...
And it was a GM 911.
But since you mentioned it, maybe we're going to get into it.
Yeah. So I found it comical, and we're literally recording this on, April Fool's Day.
Uh-huh.
So...
Final Mustang, you brought this upon the Nerdarchy community. You did. We learned it from watching you.
Yeah.
So, all right, third trimester, here's where it's hard to actually hide the aspect of what's going on.
And then you gotta figure out who the daddy is.
Well, hopefully by this point in time, you've already gone through that and figured out.
No, it's not until this point.
There's got to be like a Magic Montel show, or what's his name that they go on?
Well, there's a number of them, but
yeah, exactly. You, in fact, are the father. Like, there's a diviner wizard that it's his job to administer these tests.
Oh, in a big city, I could see them
out.
having one of those.
Yeah. My friend,
as
are
a
the
noble,
father.
as a noble, if you sleep around, I bet you're paying a lot of money to figure it out. Do I have to pay for this child for the rest of my life or not?
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
Well, okay, so that aside, I think that, towards the end of the third trimester, I'd be like, it would just be easier if you just out of combat for the time.
So I would say for the last 3 months, this is where you really should be like, all right, I'm gonna go on downtime. But if you want to push things, this is where you can seriously get into miscarriage issues. They had brought up like, oh, if you take damage, do you have to make saves to have it? This is where it becomes an issue of what is damage in your game.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, the later editions of D&D, 5th edition included, do not feel that you are actually truly injured until you've actually taken that last wound that drops you. You might have some scratches, scrapes, bruises, that kind of stuff, but you're not really in any kind of danger until you've gotten it where you're down and you're seeing if you're going to live or not. So, depending upon how you're playing your game, that's going to be the determination. But if you're making death saves, well, you should also be making death saves for that child as well.
So, I mean, also, too...
That's a good point.
Yeah, there's that, but maybe on crits, like, you want to have, like, a 1 in 6 chance. Like, so say you roll a d6 and you choose, like, whatever number is going to be the number that... Well, that could start, things going poorly for the
or maybe you're
child.
stuck on, if you fail all of them, you're stuck on bed rest or something like that because of danger or whatever like that.
Well,
there's things you could bring into it. I guess
again, it really depends upon how much ruling do you want to have on there. I think the most simplistic is if you're making death saves, you're making death saves for the child as well, and you might come out and the baby might not.
Yeah, or it might be in danger. Or you have to have the pregnant. You have to have the birth early or whatever. If it's so.
Hey, each crit could be like an auto failed, like just an auto failed death saves. Like it's like so if you took 3 crits in a day. Yeah.
Well, you could
because here's the thing: you want to drive home that like this is a thing ordinarily you really shouldn't be doing, but absolute desperate times like you're forced to do it. And if you want that in the narrative, that you can go with that more extreme, that every crit you take is like a failed death save for the unborn child or whatever.
Well, I mean,
so
you could do that, or you could be like, okay, well, what's the location of the crit? And if you want to really get it go.
Well, that's super gamist at that point.
Well,
okay, are we done doing mechanics?
Yeah.
All right, so I want to do.
Are you gonna do a PSA not to adventure while pregnant?
Overall, oh yeah, not to adventure while pregnant. But overall, I would say, mechanics aside, what kind of story do you really want to tell?
Yeah.
Like, we just gave you the mechanics because you asked for it. It's like we said, we're blaming this on you. You asked for the mechanics for it, but in the end, like, what kind of story do you want to tell? What kind of RP do you want to have happen? What kind of RP does the pregnant player want the player character to have? I mean, pregnant player character want. What does the person playing a pregnant player character want to have happen? So, like, that's kind of way more important than all the mechanics for it. But,
ultimately...
So all the rules aside, I would just say, like, what kind of story do you actually want to tell with this pregnant character?
And on top of that, ultimately, we are doing this kind of thing because it's fun. And you want to make sure that the player, the one who's dealing with this pregnancy, is the one who's having the most fun with it. If you're trying to instill all of these things to make it more of a challenge for that character at the table and thus that player at the table, then I think you're doing a disservice to it. Go and have fun with it, and hey, let them have a child and all the challenges that being an adventurer with a child can wind up going.
Get a little armor tank casing for the for the babes on the back.
Yeah, or the baby Bjorn. Yeah, situation.
Yeah.
The armor.
Yeah,
baby
just
Bjorn.
like super medieval, armored up, little slots in it.
So I'm certain you guys out there will love to either flame us in the comments for going into this ridiculous, or you have some great suggestions. Either way, whichever you want to do, there's a great section, and that's down below. While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can look at sweet little baby pictures on Instagram. Ooh, ah.
And if you want to see more fantastic content like this, you can patronize us in a good way over on Patreon.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.